Alright everyone, there's a very funny link in the description. It's actually to a Joe Biden post on Twitter. I'm going to read it verbatim, and you can see if you agree with me in my surmisings regarding it, because I think the Democrats right now are extremely nervous, and their behavior over the last 48 hours is completely different than it was, maybe a week ago. But let me read this. This is from Joe Biden. Well, it's one of Joe Biden's staffers, but I'm sure he gave him the general idea of what to tweet. Remember, every example of violence Donald Trump decries has happened on his watch, under his leadership, during his presidency. That's really, really interesting here. I guarantee that they're nervous, and here's why. Until about 48, 72 hours ago, not a single Democrat would even admit that there was violence going on at these riots. They don't even use the term riots still. They call them mostly peaceful protests. Did you see that CNN page there? Which has become a total meme. There's like fiery but mostly peaceful protests, and it's the dude sitting there, and there's like cars and businesses and shit on fire behind him. Yeah, real peaceful. By the way, when you even report that on CNN, dude, that even breaks the cognitive dissonance of some of the trust fund Karens who lean so heavily against Donald Trump. There's a reason that his approval is climbing again. He's at 44, by the way. He's already hit the magic pre-debate number, and now we got to think about whether there's even going to be a debate. Because I've also got a report on what Nancy Pelosi said encouraging Biden not to. Biden is nervous. The Democrats have done a 180. Now they're admitting that there's violence. In fact, they're saying it's monumental. It's extreme violence. Oh my God, things are terrible. But it's Trump's fault. See, the problem is this. Like with coronavirus, and Trump skates on that too, by and large, with any reasonable voter, which is not most of them, but a large chunk of the independent voting base, I'd say at least. With coronavirus response, riots, things like that, the president does not have unilateral full authority. In the United States, and anyone who took basic civics understands this, we have what's called the separation of powers. We have a checks and balances system within our government. We also have a 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment counterbalances the power of the federal government, which initially was considered very limited. Basically, diplomacy, war, basic taxation and infrastructure, and things of that nature. All the bureaucratic legalism that's been enabled by the legislature, by and large, I consider to be complete farce. It's a postmodern, unconstitutional, and generally unhelpful. But even if we look at this, the way the government works now, in its more established neoliberal form, the president, generally speaking, to do much of anything, except with bureaus that he's been empowered to control directly by Congress, by previous legislation. Generally, executive orders are fairly limited. Courts can weigh in and block it, a federal court, SCOTUS can block it, the legislature can nullify his power in a wide variety of ways, and it becomes even more difficult for the president to act on the state level. The fact is that the local cops and the state police and the state guardsmen that are responding to these riots are overseen by Democrats. Nine-tenths of all of the rioting going on are in states that are blue and cities that are blue at the same time, and the rest are in blue cities that are in other states. Like Wisconsin, it doesn't count as a blue state. It's a swing state now, or Minnesota or something like that. Even technically the Pacific Northwest as well. A little bit different than any rioting you see in like Frisco or Los Angeles. It is interesting, by the way, that it's all happening in potentially swing state areas. I think that that's for a purpose. I think that the Democrats have missed the mark. I think that they expected Trump would take the blame for this, and that people would realize, look, the president has openly offered help to multiple cities that are having this problem. He has been generally refused therein. He does not have, in all cases, the unilateral authority to send in the goats, to send in the U.S. Marines or something. He can enable the states to do so. He can accept the fact that they're declaring something to be a disaster. Just like on the local level, they would declare unlawful assembly. They would say that it's devolved into a riot, and then they can act, of course. They have to inform people of their declaration of a riot. Like with coronavirus. The president cannot himself unilaterally act. It's like when Biden says, well, I'm going to make a 3-month mask mandate. You can't. You don't have the authority. You'd be blocked by a federal court. The president cannot issue an executive order mandating that people wear a piece of cloth on their mouth. It's not legally possible. You can encourage the legislature to pass a law regarding it, which might end up with an injunction issued against it as well. By the time that the injunction gets cleared, the coronavirus epidemic will be, the footnote in history. It's already beginning to wane in the public consciousness. The president only has so much power. Basically, with coronavirus, he can free up funds, a lot of discretionary spending, disaster declaration, you say it's a national emergency, you get Pentagon funding potentially cleared up, and he did, and you can give that to states and you can advise them. You can subsidize testing. He can pass an executive order under his emergency powers regarding making ventilators, although I disagree with that on a constitutional basis as well. It is established as a power. But he can't just fiddle around with everyone's lives unilaterally, like with this. The Democrats have spent the last few months telling me there was no violence in our cities. They're peaceful protests. Chaz is a peace zone. Just ignore the 4 people that were shot there, or I think 3 people shot and 1 stabbed, if I remember correctly. Yeah, just ignore all the violence that's going on. It's not real. It's all in your head. By the way, Antifa doesn't exist. It's pure gaslighting, and now they're trying to gaslight people and ignore the fact that they've spent several months saying there's no violence. Mostly peaceful protests. Oh, they have a legitimate grievance. Sequoia Turner? Who's that? Who's Cannon Hidden? Who are all these people attendant to this political violence or potential political violence? Although in that case, I think it's psychopathy more than anything else. I mean, they've spent months telling us that there was none. And now they're saying, oh, yeah, there's violence, but it's Trump's fault. Orange man bad. The legacy media is gobbling it right up, of course. Although they're beginning to ask a few hard questions to the point where sometimes these people are getting a little nervous, including Biden. Why do you think that he might skip the debates? He's being encouraged to now by the Speaker of the House, the #1 chick in the entire fucking Democratic Party. I don't think that she was joking. I don't think that it was just a sly aside. I don't think that it was it wouldn't make any sense as a joke in that context anyway. Oh, I wouldn't justify Trump by going to the debates, she says. Now, because she's fucking nervous. It's a pile of shit. I can tell you these people are getting nervous. They're watching Trump's poll numbers. They're watching the battleground numbers. They're watching these cities explode into violence over and over again. The real problem for the Democrats is that there's no way for them to muzzle the corporate media from the next time that some person gets shot from causing more rioting in a potentially vulnerable state. The problem is that they've lit the fire and now they can't put it back out because the legacy media has to clickbait. I warned years and years ago that this sort of death spiral would happen. And the problem, towards the end of the election, they're going to look for excuses to back Trump. I actually agree with Scott Adams. You know why? Because 4 more years of Trump means 4 more years of their clickbait. Biden, you think that presidency is going to be exciting? Other than the fact that the riots won't be suppressed at the federal level, there won't be anything exciting. Oh, wow, we've got our first black female, South Asian female vice president. Woohoo, another crack in the glass ceiling. Yeah, congrats, you shattered it completely, because even if Biden survives the whole term and then wanders off into ignominious silence, Kamala, I guess, would technically be the acting president. Biden is very, very nervous. He wouldn't have made this tweet if he weren't. You just did a 180. You just nullified what you've been saying for several months. There is no violence. Mr. Trump, stay out of our community, said the mayor of Seattle. There's no problem here. Chaz is a peace zone. We've been hearing this for fucking almost 3 months. Now at the 11th hour, they decide, whoops, it's becoming politically inconvenient, all of those people getting killed by communists. Maybe they saw what happened to Rand Paul the other night, where he was walking out of the RNC back to his hotel room and got attacked by rioters. It's not a protest. They're sitting there, they're attacking the police and using strobe lights and all that shit. It was funny because they're trying to call it staged. Oh, well, this is going to be used for propaganda. Dude, a bunch of rioters, who were already rioting to begin with, decided to attack a sitting senator. He was surrounded with his wife in tow, by the way. It's not staged. It's called, you leftists are violent. You've been lied to by the corporate media and told the president is Hitler, and so you've gotten really hot under the collar and you believe that you're fighting a revolution against fascism. Really what you're doing is shitting all over your own communities and burning them to the ground and doing stupid shit, and you're really helping Trump win re-election. Probably the Antifa is probably hoping he does get re-elected so that they can at least justify the fascism fight. But they were doing it when Obama was president too. That didn't seem to keep him quiet in Ferguson, now did it? That's about all. Peace out.